Okay, there is a concept in this week's Torah portion, which I'm not sure exactly the physical parallel for this concept, what it exactly means physically, but what's more important to us is the spiritual part of it. But in order to get to the spiritual part, we have to go to the physical part as well. And it goes like this. This week's Torah portion is called Tazriya, which means to seed. There's a woman who will seed and have it a boy, have it a son. So the Talmud says that in physical intimacy, when a woman seeds first, so then a boy is produced, a son is born. But when a man seeds first, then a girl is born. Whatever that means physically is a different discussion. But let's just accept that this is the way it is, and we'll God willing we'll get to the spiritual meaning of this. Let's learn this inside. Morning, Dr. Bressman. It says in the Gemara, when a woman seeds first, a boy is born. When a man seeds first, a girl is born. Maybe Rabbi Nazar can push philosophy. So there were philosophers, apparently they're not Jewish philosophers, who knew about this as well. And they had their interpretation of why this is. That why is this that when a woman seeds first, a boy is born? And they said the reason for this is because when the woman seeds first, then the man's emission is on top, and whatever is on top dominates, and therefore the masculine energy, which dominates because it's on top. If she seeds first, her seed is lower than the man's seed.
So it's a son.
Then it's a son.
Yeah.
So they say, why is it? It's not because, as they say, the son is born from the man's energy, from the man's seed. And the reason why that when a woman seeds first, a son is born is because the masculine energy dominates only when it's on top. And because she seeds first, and now the masculine energy is on top, the masculine seed is on top, that's why a boy is born. The It's very difficult to say this, the Alter Rebbe says, because the language of the Torah, language of the Gemara is, when a woman seeds first, a son is born. That language sounds like her seed is what produces the son. It's not that because of circumstance, the man's seed is now dominating and therefore a boy is born. It sounds more like in the Gemara, that's the opposite. That the woman's seed is what produces the son, not the man's seed. The Gemara says that Dinah is called Yaakov's daughter, and Dinah's brothers are called the children of Leah. The Torah ascribes the children, the sons of Yaakov, to his wife, and they ascribe the daughter of Yaakov to Yaakov. Why? The Torah does that. The Torah does, and the Gemara explains, you know why this is true? Because when a man seeds first, a girl is born.
Right.
So we see clearly that the Torah is associating the daughter with a father, not because his seed is connected to his daughter. Not like the philosophers want to say that the girl is born because of the it's not that the philosophers want to say that a girl is born from the feminine seed and a boy is born from the masculine seed, and it's just because of circumstance that when the masculine seed is second, it dominates when it's on top. It sounds like clearly from the Torah that the woman, the daughter, Dinah, she has relationship to Yaakov because she comes from his seed specifically, that the man's seed is what produces a girl and a woman's seed produces a boy. וכן הוא במדרש רבה תזריע, ולכן מפרש כפשוטי, איש כזריע יתל להיממה שדי זה זך וליק בשפלוסם מחזר זרע אבזך ולסיר אין שם. So Alter Rebbe says, he disagrees, and he explains that the reason why when a woman seeds first, a boy is produced, is because of the woman's seed. The woman's seed specifically produces a boy, and the man's seed specifically produces a girl. V'hine, kiven shepirush ha'filosofim huva digdel Yisrael, shuva b'kayim upon mechsidus, v'ashne spasha v'revet tus Yisrael. Since this explanation of these philosophers is something that has been shared by great tzaddikim, and it's something that the Jewish people all know about, because it's something that was shared by our tzaddikim, and it's brought down in Chassidus. And the Alter Rebbe himself, although he disagrees with them, he still mentions them, and he explains them, and he tries to prove that they're wrong. So the very fact that they are mentioned in the Torah, although the Alter Rebbe disagrees with his explanation, we just finished that Ma'amar up to Nusikha. Although the Alter Rebbe disagrees with their explanation, right there. There's also this coffee here and there's milk. It's kosher today. We're still waiting for the, yes.
I have a question. The Alter Rebbe, are you talking about Yosef Yitzhak?
No, that's the previous Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe was the first Rebbe. He's called the old Rebbe. The first Rebbe.
Very crazy question. Did the Alter Rebbe have any training in medical at the time, medical technology?
I don't know that the Alter Rebbe had specific medical training or not, but the Alter was very knowledgeable of all different sciences. He was knowledgeable without any specific training, but he was knowledgeable of different kinds of sciences. There are many stories of the Alter Rebbe who they had a big question in the time of the Alter Rebbe that of a sundial that belonged to a certain Russian nobleman, and all different astronomers were trying to figure out why the sundial wasn't working. And only the Alter Rebbe was able to figure out what the issue was. So he was knowledgeable in all kinds of sciences.
So without being a doctor, he had knowledge of that.
Yeah. There is a famous story of the Mittler Rebbe. When we wash, we're not supposed to interrupt by talking, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the Rebbe Rashab had additional stringency upon himself that not only did he not interrupt in talking, his thoughts also, whenever he washed, he would somehow just be totally focused on the mitzvah of washing, not interrupting his thoughts either. So one time, I think it was uncle of his or relative of his, I don't remember who it was. The Rebbe Rashab had washed, and he told the Rebbe Rashab this amazing thing that the doctors had discovered. What they discovered that when you lean your head forward, you concentrate better because of the certain vein in the brain that has helped concentration. And you lean forward, helps you concentrate. When you lean back, it helps you remember things. So the Rebbe Rashab was at a wash from He didn't want to interrupt, but as soon as he finished washing and saying the bracha and eating, you're supposed to actually, when you wash from you're supposed to actually eat at least an ounce before talking. You don't know that. Anyway, so he ate. Then he said, with this that the scientists have discovered now, this was in the newspapers at that time, of the Rebbe Rashab 100 years ago. What the scientists have discovered now was printed hundreds of years before by the second Rebbe of Chabad, by the Mittler Rebbe. The Mittler Rebbe writes in a discourse this exact thing, and he shows in this discourse, and he said, wow, how did the Mittler Rebbe know that? Was he a great scientist? Was he a doctor? He said, no, but he knew how things are in heaven, and because he knew how things are in heaven, since it says that God made man in his image, so by understanding how things are spiritually, he knew how things are physically as well. So there are a lot of things that different paths of knowing different things that are beyond the scope of us Neanderthals. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Someone asked the Rebbe once that they heard the Rebbe knows all kinds of philosophy, all kinds of sciences. How can the Rebbe know all these things? I don't want to misquote. I don't remember the exact words the Rebbe said, but something to the effect of that the Rebbe said, when I was younger, I heard this about the Vilna Gaon. The Vilna Gaon knows all kinds of sciences, and I wondered about that as well. And the Rebbe said there's two possible explanations, and one is that the Torah contains within it all wisdoms. So it's possible that someone learns the Torah, the way the way the Torah, like the real core of it, since the Torah is a source of all wisdoms, through studying Torah, they're able to know other wisdoms. But the Rebbe then told this woman who had this question, I'm not responsible for all the rumors that people say about me. So, anyways, but he first told her the first thing. He said, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Bessman.
So, I want to straighten this out in my mind because, males are XYs, females are XXs.
You missed the first sentence of the class. First sentence of the class was, I don't know the physical explanation for this. I don't know the physical. I just know what it says. I don't know how what the. I'm gonna leave that to you. You're gonna tell me tomorrow how it makes sense. But I wouldn't be able to explain this physically. I have no idea. So since the Alter brings explanation of the philosophers, and we must say that even according to Alter Rebbe, this explanation has merit. So when the second column, the paragraph over there on top. So the line starts with the word lemar. If the Alter Rebbe would have totally disagreed with this explanation and thought that has no merit whatsoever, he would not have even mentioned this explanation. The fact that he mentions it and disagrees with it indicates that this is something that has merit. In general, Chassidus doesn't mention other opinions and discount them. It seems like the Alter Rebbe wants to bring this specifically and highlight this explanation because it has merit. The main explanation is the Alter Rebbe's explanation that the male seed produces the girl and the female seed produces a boy. But the Alter Rebbe also brings this other explanation of the philosophers that the reason why when a man seeds first, a girl is produced is because the male seed is on top of the woman's seed. So, in short, we did in the first section of this sikha is we brought the two explanations of the words of our sages that when a woman seeds first, a girl is produced. Either this is because that the woman's seed specifically produces a boy, like Alter Rebbe says, or like the explanation of the philosophers that the woman's seed produces a boy because when the woman's seed is there first, the woman's seed produces a boy because the woman's seed is there first, then the man's seed dominates and therefore a boy is produced because the man's seed dominates only when it's on top. So, and we must say that there is some merit to the explanation of the philosophers as well. That's what we've done so far. Before we go further, just a little, just where we're going. We're going to explain the concept of seeding and the man seeding first, the woman seeding first spiritually, and we're going to see what the philosophers said has merit as well spiritually, and then we're going to go to the Alter Rebbe's explanation as well, and discover that the explanation of the Alter Rebbe and the explanation of the philosophers are actually two stages in their service of Hashem. There are two steps in their service of Hashem: the philosopher's level and the Alter Rebbe's level, as we shall see. Any question before we go on?
You explained it pretty well.
Thank you. We're just in the second side of the first page. Page Hey. We'll understand this by first prefacing. The fact that when a woman seeds first, a boy is produced. Everything that happens in this world originates from spiritual world. Nothing happens here without it happening first in heaven. The man and the woman are representative of Hashem and the Jewish people. God is called the husband and we are called his wife. So the seeding, what does it mean that Hashem seeds or we seed? That means inspiration. There are times when Hashem inspires us first. That's the meaning of the man seeds first spiritually, that God inspires us. And then there are times when we arouse ourselves to come close to Hashem. With our own efforts, we try to lift ourselves up. We try to inspire ourselves to come close to Hashem. That's the meaning of the woman seeding first. So what happens when God inspires us first? It doesn't last, because Hashem shows you a miracle, Hashem inspires you, you're like, wow, this is amazing. But it doesn't last because it's something that Hashem has done for you and it's not your own, and therefore it doesn't last. But when you inspire yourself first, when you make the first move, it stays because it's your own move. Azayla de Zachar, the meaning of a Zachar, of a man spiritually, means something that's something that will stay. It says that a woman is easily no offense to but not hasn't not in college, which means that they can easily be convinced of things. Don't try this at home, folks. But but it says Dash and Kalazi, but a man, he has an opinion, he's strong. This is my opinion, this is the way it is. So when are you a man? When are you able to be a man spiritually, that you're able to generate a feeling of I want Hashem and I want to hold on to this, it's going to last. That's when your inspiration comes from within, when there is feminine energy, when there's energy that comes from within the Jewish people. But when there's a masculine energy that's there first, that triggers this whole relationship, when Hashem inspires us first, Hashem shows us this miracle. So then you have to be cautious. It may not last. The Alter talks about specifically a certain kind of love, where a person says, I don't want the heaven, I don't want the earth, all I want is you, Hashem. I don't want your Gan Eden, I don't want your world to come, all I want is you. That kind of very strong, cavaliering kind of energy, I only want you alone, that masculine energy is generated only when there is inspiration from within ourselves, inspiration from below. What's called in the Zayar is Sarusul Lasat. Masha Enke, Isham Azra Tchila, and Shazayas and Shams on the Shakas, Ela, Bleakton Suslasata, Adailas Nakeva, Avitanos, Avazuta, and Ashmat Kal. However, when inspiration comes from Hashem, so then a girl is born. That means it's a lower kind of love, a lower kind of inspiration, and something that can stop. In general, lower love and higher love, let's just unwrap that for a second. Unpack that. Lower love, higher love. Look at note 2 on the bottom over here. This pamphlet is a sikha which has been explained by Rabbi Ashkenazi from Kfar Chabad, and he goes through the sikha and explains very deeply very many parts of the sikha. So he addresses the two kinds of love over here. Note number 2. Ava Rabba, Ava Zuta. Great love and small love. What does that mean? Tezriya, Ava Rabba, and Saf, Beziv, the Alter says that there is a kind of love where a Jew wants to be close to Hashem. We're discussing on Shabbos, actually, Shabbos morning, we're discussing about how a Jew is like a candle that just like a candle flickers upward. It says in chapter 19 in Tanya. Although, why does a candle flicker upwards? Because the Nachmanides says there's a sublunar sphere where the element of fire is there. And the reason why a candle flickers upwards is because it wants to go to its source, the element of fire, which is in a sublunar sphere. And although if the fire would depart from the candle, it would stop to exist, the fire doesn't care. The fire just wants to go to its source. In a similar way, every soul, every Jew has this yearning to cleave to Hashem. And although if you cleave to Hashem, you would stop, you would disintegrate, you would not be who you are right now, you become absorbed in Hashem's truth. But it doesn't matter. There is this love-sick relationship that Jew has with Hashem. It doesn't matter what will happen to me, it won't happen to me. A Jew has this love for Hashem, and that's the reason, Alter says it there in chapter 19, that's the reason why Jews have chosen to die rather than accept Christianity or anything else, because they have this yearning to cleave to Hashem. It doesn't matter what happens to them. So you could have be absorbed in God's essence and disintegrate. Doesn't sound like fun, does it? But there's a part of you that likes that. That's the deepest part of your neshama. But then there's another place which you could have the best of both worlds. You could be in Gan Eden, in heaven. You could enjoy God's light and still be you. So what would you rather have? So there's a lower kind of love. There's a lower kind of love where a person's not interested in becoming absorbed in God's truth, and rather he wants to just enjoy pina coladas, let's say, in Gan Eden. He wants to be in Gan Eden and have his pina colada in Gan Eden, enjoy the Hasidic discourses in Gan Eden. And the previous Rebbe was once in the middle of a Hasidic discourse. He had to get a phone call. So he left the discourse and he said, leaving, I don't know what a Hasidic discourse is. I know what leaving Hasid's discourse is. Just tell you what happened. Friedrich is said it under his breath, leaving the air of heaven, leaving the air of Gan Eden. He came back to continue the discourse. He said, go back into the air of Gan Eden, back into the air of heaven. So in Gan Eden, there is pleasure of godliness. But if a person wants to stay me and be in Gan Eden instead of becoming one with Hashem, that means that it's a lower kind of love. He wants what's secondary, what's not so important, so he could still stay and exist. When he has this headlong desire to be one with Hashem, it doesn't matter what will happen to him, that's called a masculine kind of love. When he has this love which is lower, a lower kind of love, which I want to be close to Hashem, but I still want to remain me, that's called a feminine love. So what produces a higher kind of love, that's when inspiration comes from within. When Hashem inspires us, so then we're swept along with it to some extent, but it doesn't make us have this headstrong cleaving to Hashem kind of thing. I think of like a person going to a museum, an art gallery, and you're looking at the art gallery and you're looking at one particular painting, and you are a connoisseur of art, and you look at the painting, you're trying to grasp the majesty of the painting, and as you're looking at it, what happens is that if it's a really nice painting, you're really into it. What happens is at first you're trying to get the painting, and then eventually you're lost in the painting. You forget about yourself. You're taken by it.
That happened to me. Yeah.
Happened to you?
Yeah, when I looked at the Guernica, Picasso's Guernica, I got lost.
Have you found your way back yet?
Never. I still don't know. I've started, I still don't understand it. It's
Okay.
beautiful.
Okay, cool, exactly. So the higher kind of love is he gets lost in his love of Hashem. Doesn't matter what happens to me. He chooses what the main thing is. I want Hashem himself. What's difference that happens to me? A lower kind of love where a person wants Hashem, but he also wants to be there in the mix. So those are the two kinds of love where Hashem inspires us first, or we inspire ourselves. But Tamhu, what's the reason why when inspiration comes from within, it doesn't stop and it reaches a higher level, and when the inspiration comes from Hashem, it does stop. We're in the second column. When the inspiration comes from Hashem by himself without us doing anything, we're only getting to the external light of Hashem. However, when inspiration comes from within ourselves, we reach a higher level. We get to the core of the truth of Hashem. We get to the inner light of Hashem. So that triggers a inspiration from Hashem that brings us to a higher kind of love. So it's really what we're reaching that affects us. I was saying before, it has to do with whether it's internal or not, but that's not accurate, it seems. Maybe that's accurate too, but there's another point here. When Hashem inspires you himself, what is he giving you? He's giving you something external. And therefore, what does that trigger in you? An external kind of love, where you're right, you want to have the pina colada too. You want to enjoy. You don't want to go all the way. But when you make inspiration from within yourself, says in the Torah, Kol Levavos Der Shavai, God seeks all the hearts. So Hashem responds. Hashem responds to a person. If you decide to come close to Hashem, so Hashem responds to that. The Gemara says that we say in davening, a broken spirit is called a sacrifice to Hashem. So just when you bring a sacrifice, a fire comes down from heaven to consume the sacrifice. So it's so too a Jew makes inspiration by himself close to Hashem, that causes a response. And that response is he reaches a higher level, and therefore it causes something otherworldly within himself that he wants to cleave to Hashem. It doesn't matter what happens to him. Okay, so Hashem will continue tomorrow. Those are the two kinds of inspiration. When it comes from Hashem, it causes a lower kind of love. When it comes within us, it reaches a higher kind of love. Any questions before we stop?
It's kind of heavy. I gotta really think about what you talked about. Yeah.
It's counterpositive. Because a woman, the act of creation is allowing somebody else to come into herself. Man is.
Mr. Bressman, I gave you the homework. You got to figure this out. You're the doctor here.
Okay. One question. I got a question